So, negotiators on Capitol Hill say that they've reached a bipartisan framework for a one-year spending deal. But key Republican leadership may not be on the same page here.
House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy slammed Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for working with Democrats on that spending deal. CNN's Melanie Zanona joins us from Capitol Hill now. So we've heard that, behind the scenes, McCarthy was open at least to a large spending deal to wrap up the year. What is happening here publicly? What's going on?
Yeah, this is the Hope Yes, Vote No caucus. Many Republicans that I talked to believe that McCarthy is actually privately rooting for this spending bill to pass. The reason is because if he does become Speaker, the last thing he wants to deal with is having to address a potential government shutdown upon immediately taking power. But at the same time, he's been struggling to win over some of his conservative critics. They have been pressing him to take a harder line on spending issues, to stand up to McConnell, on a number of those things. And so that is why you see McCarthy out there publicly railing against this spending deal. And he took a public shot at McConnell, who has been trying to work behind the scenes to get this deal done. And sources tell us that McConnell was blindsided by that, and he was really caught off guard. Now, McCarthy held a press conference not too long ago where he again talked about the spending deal and spoke out against it. He did not mention McConnell by name, but he did criticize the Republican and Democratic senator who helped broker this deal. Take a listen.
I propose that you have two senators who are gone. You just had an election where we changed the course, where the House is now going to be controlled by Republicans. You have Democrats who controlled all and didn't do their job are now going to try to jam us right before Christmas. A bill that funds the entire government, that we don't have any input in and others. It wouldn't have anything to do with being Speaker. It has to do with the American public and what the future of America is going to be when it comes to fiscal resources.
Now, the divide between the House GOP and the Senate GOP is nothing new. It's a tale as old as time. In fact, we've seen McCarthy and McConnell split over the last 2 years over everything from guns to infrastructure. But if Kevin McCarthy does become Speaker, this is going to be an interesting dynamic to watch, guys.
So politics as usual at play here. Melanie Zanona, thank you. Joining us now is CNN political commentator Alyssa Farah-Griffin. She is a former White House communications director under President Trump. So what do you make of this strategy of Kevin McCarthy's? I mean, surely he does not want to inherit a majority and a government shutdown at the same time.
Right, and that's where Melanie nailed it. Listen, it wouldn't be the holidays if Capitol Hill wasn't, scrambling to avert a government shutdown. We were used to this every December. But this is very much Kevin McCarthy publicly saying something that's privately different than what he wants to see happen. And what's going to be interesting is to get this across the finish line, it's going to take some moderate Republicans who, if he is smart, and he is, Kevin is a strategically wise person, those are going to be the most important people to him if he becomes Speaker. It's going to be the moderate Republicans who are willing to cross over the aisle. There's big priorities that come up next cycle. I think of, the National Defense Authorization, Farm Bill reauthorization, things he's not going to be able to pass just on his slim Republican majority. So this is a moment where he's saying, please vote for this to a number of moderate Republicans while privately blasting it, or publicly, I should say, blasting it.
And that's for the consumption of the rest of the conference. He's trying to get to 218 so he could get the gavel, right?
The magic number.
So, listen, Pelosi had some holdouts in 2019. Boehner had holdouts. I think in 2013, it almost went to a second ballot for the Speaker's race. What is McCarthy facing that they did not face, that he could potentially go round after round in search of the votes to get there?
So this is coming from the vintage Freedom Caucus playbook that they tried to run against John Boehner, and actually Speaker Ryan, back in 2015. Now, keep in mind, they once blocked Kevin McCarthy from being Speaker before, and eventually Paul Ryan reluctantly stepped up and put his name forward. The same group, which looks different now, there's different members, are basically saying we've got 4 strong holdouts, but remember, 31 members voted against him in the private caucus meeting. So my guess is Kevin is doing whatever he can to twist 2 of those arms to get him to the number he needs to be at. But that's a tough thing to do, and they've been very public and outspoken, I think of Matt Gaetz and others, that I'm not sure you could switch their votes. So what happens is during the floor vote, they're going to vote for someone else, I'd guess an Andy Biggs, and it could go to multiple ballots. And I think the assumption is that somebody will emerge as the consensus candidate. Is it a Jim Jordan? Is it, somebody more
Scalise
conservative,
maybe.
a Scalise perhaps, somebody more aligned with the conservative flank within the House? The best argument Kevin McCarthy has is that they have not put up a viable alternative who themselves can get to 218. And he has done a masterful job at really wrangling the arms of his rank and file and getting a few of those very right-wing members like Marjorie Taylor Greene solidly in his corner. So we'll see. It's really an open question if he will get the speakership.
What does it say to you that even the former president advocating for him to get the speakership role at this point and vouching for him publicly is not getting him to that place right now?
I think it shows Trump's weakened state within the party. I think if this was pre-midterms, that was pretty much McCarthy was banking on if he had the Trump endorsement, he'd get over the finish line. But then with Republicans not taking back the Senate and having such a slim majority in the House, I think that the power that Trump has, even within the conference itself, and the House Republican conference is certainly more conservative than the Senate, his voice just doesn't matter the way that it once did. Frankly, I'd be calling Ron DeSantis and asking for an endorsement if I were Kevin McCarthy.
Let's talk about Ron DeSantis because there's new CNN polling out. Warm off the printer, it's so fresh. 62% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents want someone other than Donald Trump at the top of the ticket in 2024. Most of those people who want someone else want Ron DeSantis, Florida governor. No one else has more than a single point, percentage point in this. If you are a Ted Cruz, if you're a Nikki Haley, does this matter so far out from Iowa? What do you see here?
Well, DeSantis is obviously the consummate frontrunner right now, especially after having victory, what we'd call victory during the midterms when other Republicans just did not do as well as we anticipated. My caution with the DeSantis momentum is he's peaking early. So it does mean all ire is going to be directed at him. The former president is going to come at him much harder than he has. That's just by nature what Trump is going to do, but also that this is his biggest rival right now. So I think that all of that energy is going to come on trying to attack DeSantis, which could open the field to other candidates. I'd keep my eyes on some governors, some people outside of, former Trump cabinet secretaries who may be thinking, seeing the midterms, hey, this might be an opening for me to run, whether it's an Asa Hutchinson or a Chris Sununu in New Hampshire. And I think they have a good case to make for just kind of a change. We've run a state, we've done it effectively, and we're kind of putting this Trump era behind us. That could be formidable even against a DeSantis.
Yeah, and DeSantis hasn't been tested nationally either,
Correct.
so that's a point to be made as well. Alyssa, great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.